Hey people, nothing fancy here. This is old Hindu Kali, and Kali means black, but it also means good, and often seen with this head of a man cut off and draining the blood. And so I was going to show you, I said in that last movie, when it says, and the two of them made a covenant, it'll say to court and sign in writ is what it usually says. And I run into this is the same word they'll use. It says, and they cut off the head of Shiva. And they'll pronounce this Shiva because it doesn't have the dot in there. And the head is the rose. But I wanted to show you something else in here, right down here, of every man, from the city, every man. And where they're getting this every is right here, all, from all. And they withdrew from the city, every man is actually here. It's who puts, and then who puts them all, the air, puts it all out there. And this is usually ace, they'll say, is a man, or many other. But I'm going to grab this screenshot and compare it to something else over here. It was here in Zephaniah 3:6 where they says, there's cities and there is no one. They're saying this word is usually a man. Can mean one, or it can mean every one of them. And so you can see the difference here. This is the air, O-I-R, or the oi, the caller, from all, the caller, ace. And here's the cities. The cities are ories, O-R-I-E-S, factories. And it's not a city, but it's, fact means to create, fabricate is where it comes from. And the ories is the place of the happening, the ories. And they give a lot of words, no and thou shalt not, but this is the new one on me. First time I ever seen this. And here it is, with none. And it's, from belly. And you see this word, I have cut off the nations again, and the cratty guys, and they'll use another word in the same line for no here. And this is the base word they'll say is no, ayin, which is naya backwards. And here it's main, the main man. But this same word, that they say is to cut off the head of Shiva, it's the same word when they said they made a covenant with Shiva. Made a covenant with Beersheba. It's the same word to make a covenant, made a covenant, or to cut a branch, or to cut down every man. And so, you might not be wanting to make no covenant. There might be something hidden in the words in there. They cut off his head, cut off the head, or made a covenant, But yeah, this same word for to cut off your head, is who court, K-R-T-U, who court to, and then sign is, the final M is a S, and the sign is to sign, E-T-H-E-S, sign this, and then in writ, Brit, in writ, and put it in the writings, in the legal documents, in writ. To court and sign in writ is what it says, and made the two of them a covenant. And so this is all the different ways this would be spelled, many of them, and that's what they have in common is the KRT, and it could be an A or a U or anything following it, and it's cratic. And like I say, when the first book of Job was written, the crat was the seven sisters in Taurus, and that was the governor. That was the mark of Easter, was the crat. And that's where our word cratic, democratic, to govern, that's where that word come from 6,500 years ago in the book of Job, back with the ancient Indian astrology. So how they get this, who court to sign this in writ, as in to make a covenant, or who court to in writ, made a covenant. In writ is Brit. It's British. It's where your word British come from. Or and from there cut down a branch who court to. And so what these all have in common, I just happened to catch this last month.
Millions upon millions of sticks, a bit like this, were used for 600 years in the medieval period. They performed a really important role. What was that role, and how was it used?
So these were tally sticks. You know, tally-ho. It's a British word. The tally sticks were used as a memory aid. And what they would do is they would take a stick and they would cut notches across it, and different size notches for different amounts, and they would split that stick down the center, and so you had a receipt. You know, your stick matched the court stick, and you had a receipt that you paid your taxes. But the records show, you know, that this is something that happened in Britain. They called them a Cuba, the Inca people. And so maybe Britain learned it from over here in the Americas, where they use them in the same fashion to monitor tax obligations. And this is Genesis here, you know, and thus they made a covenant, who court to in writ, the Brit. And so that makes me think more that it was probably the British writing this and not quite the Incas. But yeah, the British were probably worldwide sailors, and they probably taught the Incas how to do this as they were trading dyes and drugs and shipping them to England 4,500 years ago. Genesis. And if I search, I'll probably find the same word for the covenant over there in the book of Job, which would put this, you know, 6,500 years ago. And being that I had read that a couple months ago, it took about 1 minute to find this, you know, a covenant I have made is, you know, Brit, B-R-I-T, in the Brit, in the court, the courty, the covenant I have made. You know, the Pleiades is the 7 daughters of Atlas in the Greek mythology. And you hear this Pleiades, you know, where's the Krita in the Sanskrit in the Hindu astrology. So this line here is our ecliptic, and it's where all the planets and the sun travel through. And you can see this is Taurus. This is the horns of Taurus here. It's where the sun's sitting right now on the 9th of June. You know, it was sitting right here in the horns of Taurus. And so this is Crati right here. This is the Pleiades. And so this is a gate. They call it a little gate, you know, and this is the end of the year, and this was the new year. This was the marking of Easter 6,500 years ago when the book of Job was written. That's what it means, you know, in the writ of Crati, the book of Job. And so Crati was the spot where the sun sat at Easter. When the sun came up due east, it was sitting between this set of stars here. So now when the sun rises in Easter, you know, it's over here closer to Pisces or Aquarius. You know, when that sun goes across that east spot, that's Easter. That's where Easter comes from. Now this spot's always changing, but it lets you know that's how the books of the Bible was written. That's how they kept time. And so you read in the book, and in that book of Job, it says Crati was in the writ of Crati, you know, in the covenant of Crati. And so that meant Easter was at this point right here. And so if you measure the degrees from there to where the sun rises now at Easter, and then you multiply those degrees, 72, it tells you how old the book of Job is. And it's around 6,500 years old. In all the books of the Bible, you find out what the Crati is, what the govern is, and it gives you the date of when that book was written. They read it like that because they knew that they were going to flip numbers for whatever crazy reason to hide time. But that's how you figure the time. But what this really tells me is the British wrote the Bible. The British were in India 6,500 years ago. The British wrote the Bible. And they got our entire story twisted. They got our entire history twisted. So, in writ cradle oying, whom, at, in, when, in, all, in, tool. This is usually what they'll say is virgin. In tool, be tool, but tool. And so, in the writ, in the covenant of the craddy, or the cradle, the cradle, and this is the real beginning. Job is an older book. The cradle. In the writ of the cradle, and then oying. O-I is the call, and an N-I is an ing. The calling. The oyin is, to see in, but the oying is of calling. In the writ of cradle calling, cradle oying, whom, W-H-O-M-E, whom, U-M, whom, connected from the, connected from the whom, and an at, whom at, and then in, and then W-N-N, whom at, in, when in, at that time when it's in, all in tool. And so when the sun's coming up at Easter, when it's over there in Craddy, 180 degrees away from that, if you got a full moon, it'll be sitting in the Virgin. And so that's how you knew, it was time to go set the clock. You got 12 moons in 10 days, and so you're on your 12th moon, and you start watching for the sun to pass over the due east. And, that's the next moon is Easter. And that's how they count that up. That's how they figure Easter every year. And they've been doing it like that since the book of Job. That's where you cut the year off and started the new year. You had 13 moons between. You had 12.372 moons come through. You had 12 moons, and you was 10 days into the month. And so you would call Bastet up, and she would come and readjust your calendar. And that was what it's talking about when uniting Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. It was uniting where the sun travels from the lower to the upper. So in the Coptic Egyptian, this is known as a tribunal, and it's where our word tribunal comes from. The federal government of the United States for the purpose of resolving disputes involving or arising under federal laws. And so they would call the old tabby to come have a tribunal. And so it's, the at tribunal, a tribunal. So a tab, is just to tab, to keep the writings. It's a play on words, a tribunal. But, you look in the letters, and it's at, in, when, W-N. And so it comes from the base word boon, a tribune, a tribunal, or at boon. The Tribune, that's an Indian newspaper. And it's coming from this old Norse word boon. You see it with two N's, past participle of boo, to prepare. At prepare, whom at prepare. In the Middle English, it was borrowed from the Old Norse, the boon. And so, not just to look at it, but at to prepare. Whom at to prepare. And so, in the writ of craddy, of calling, of oying whom at boon, at who to prepare, all in tool. All in tool. The tool, the young woman is the tool. In the writ of cradle calling, whom at boon, whom at to prepare, all in tool. And so this reads a couple more times, with the directional markings, and defines it a little better. And it ends with, two of the first markings that I learned is tack, tell me to read the next word backwards and forwards. And this A just tell me to read this word backwards. And so, then it's to men, M-E-N, to men of, to, all. And then it's, E is the loot, the L-U-T, the loot in tool. And the loot is the money, the pirates loot, the loot in tool. And so, if you knew that in the writ of the craddy, That's so you could figure out the time. It's for sailors. And if you knew it, you was of the men of to all the loot and tool. And so the loot and tool, is also the money. And it's the people that print your money. They're the ones that know this. They put little marks in the money, keep up with the time through astrology. And so if you read it with these bottom marks here, then you're reading it in writ, and you come back and grabbing this B, in written. And then this line, tell me to read this, the KR, and then back the other way, K, and the cracket, and then writ, RITL. In writ, in cracket, riddle, calling whom, now it's UME, and then come back and grab this ME again, and whom men of to all the loot and tool. This is the talk about the this is the riddle to crack. This is the book of Job here, 31, first line. And then if you read it with the top marks, it's in writ, in cradle, calling, and then it's whom at bono. Then you come back and grab this A, BUNNA, bono, BUNNO, ancient word for bonus. Whom bonus all the loot and tool. And so they'll say, bono means good from the Latin, but it doesn't mean good, it means to the good. Bonus is when you buy 10 pounds and you get a free pound. A free pound is bonus. And it means, to the good side of, not just good. And so in writ, cradle, calling, that means this is, the beginning. This is the first grade book, in the writ of cradle, calling. And so to me it looks like a song that, pirates on the boat were singing, and each taking a turn to, in the loot and tool, and twisting the same song up a little bit. You might have heard songs like this where they change just a couple words. And, so if you're reading the bottom marks, it's Britain, BRIT, and then the B is IN, the Britain. And the Bricken Cracket, the riddle calling, and calling them Helma, EME, Helmuth, blood, to calling them blood, at booning, at preparing all in tool. And I had to go to Bing for this search. Google wasn't letting that through. But that's what it's talking about. It's talking about the lizard people, the blood drinking lizard people. The Britain Cracket riddle, Oyingham blood, Oyingham Helma, at boon, at prepare all in tool, in the virgin. That's what that word means every time it comes up. So I got to figure they got it right one of the 6 times that this is read. So I'm going to go this chapter and read some more of it and see where this is going. Whom hath all we mammal, whom hath all we mammal, when helt shady, 2 D's, the shady, SHDDY. And they'll say this is Shaddai, the Almighty, most of the time. And when helt shady mammermies, and it's making fun of the word memory, but memory, the memormies. Yeah, so it's kind of going on with it. Whom half all we mammal, we half mammal and half lizard, and inheritance of is when helt shady memories that we don't quite remember. The shady, the Almighty he's shady. The shady memories. It's talking about a bunch of drunk sailors, and they have shady memories. I showed you 1 or 2 movies ago, this MR means from a high place. It's the word for the pyramid. So a high place, doesn't mean over your head. The high place is in your head, the MR from the head. And so what this makes me think, shady memories, drunk sailors. makes me think that this isn't Batul isn't a virgin at all. Batul is the bottle. You know, the Britain Crackett riddle. Seeing home blood at boon, at prepare, the blooded prepare, you know, the wine, all, you know, be in bottle, whom half all we mammal, when helped shady memories. And so when this is read back, you know, with the directional marks, it's got many more in here, and it's going to change this story up. So I'm going to finish this up. I'm going to go back and look where it was talk about cutting off Sheba's head. It's easy to see what this says, you know, what taboo, and then, you know, has says, HASES, has is, what taboo has is, and so the little magnifying glass has you read it, you know, taboo one time, and one time you're reading it taboo, and the AE is, what taboos is says, all call hoes in checkmate, not in her wisdom, but in checkmate, who crat to at rose, and so this is Seva, you know, it's not Sheba, it's SEV, SEVO, and who, and at rose Seva, and so it's who in crat to, who has the says, and whose head, you know, gets cut off at rose Seva. But when you come back and read it with these directional markings, this marking here has you read this part of this word two more times, you know, and who crat to, who governs to, you know, and then makes crat, who governs to makes crat at, and then it's backwards, you know, the SOROS, that's Soros, and then you read this rose again with this mark, you know, and it's to Soros rose severed, to Soros head cut off.
Don't forget, hooty hoot, I won't forget.
Alright, I'm gonna cut this off here. Good day.